Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. Women of Scotland, just be aware that the Justice Secretary and Scottish Police cannot answer a simple question that involves your safety. If you go into hospital, what are your chances of being sexually abused or AR'd? Well, figures for the UK-wide sort of policing show 6,500 R's and sex assaults have been committed in the last 4 years in hospitals. Police Scotland will not say how many north of the border have been committed. They don't keep those records. And yet we know from, I've done previous videos on this, that it happens in hospitals. And then what often happens, and this is the most worrying thing of all, is that the NHS then covers up these attacks. It doesn't want to be seen as being in any way helpful, because if it admitted how some of these attacks have occurred, it would be seen as being politically damaging. And so they actually cover up the attacks on women. This is the NHS, and this is now being proven. This is a provable case. I'm not inventing this. So it comes as a bit of a surprise that Police Scotland and the Justice Minister do not have those figures. Surely that could be easily reached, but apparently not. We'll have a look at this article, but it is very, very worrying on how many attacks in a hospital occur. Scandalous that Police Scotland refuses to reveal the hospital attacks stats for UK report. The Women's Rights Network found that 6,500 R's and SAs have been recorded in the UK hospitals in 4 years, but Police Scotland couldn't tell them how many had been recorded north of the border. And there is, it just demands the number. Why are they unable to do this? Surely they know. They absolutely know. It's not as though they have to go across single forces. There's one force in Scotland. Police Scotland has been blasted by a women's organisation for refusing to reveal the number of R's and sex assaults recorded in Scottish hospitals. The Women's Rights Network used freedom of information requests to the 43 police forces in England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland to uncover some horrifying statistics. If you go to hospital, you have got more chance of being AR'd than if you're on the streets. How can that possibly be right? It's obviously because you're there, you're in a known location, you've got nowhere to go to, and you're vulnerable. I'm astounded by the numbers. Even I am. This is one thing where I deal with this all the time. I do a lot of videos on the police. I am astounded by that number. 6,500 in 4 years. It's an epidemic. There must be something done. Somebody has to be held responsible for this. Anyway, the report found at least 2,088 R's and 4,451 sexual assaults had been recorded since 2019. But 8 forces, including Police Scotland, which is the biggest, did not provide figures. WRN spokesman Heather Binning said, "It is inconceivable that these shocking crimes are not being committed in Scotland too, given the horrific numbers," and that I'm sorry, I'm still astounded by this. "Given the horrific numbers we have uncovered in the rest of the UK, it is likely that dozens, possibly hundreds of women, children and men have been sexually assaulted or AR'd in hospitals around Scotland." It's undoubtedly the case. How are the police not recording this? It is scandalous that Police Scotland cannot tell us how many R's and SAs in hospitals have been reported to them. If important data like this is not being collected or cannot be readily retrieved, the service's systems are not fit for purpose, and we know this. And this is 16 years of SNP control of the police. This is not Westminster, this is not England, this is down totally to the SNP. You've got Constance, who's the current Justice Secretary. She's currently responsible. She must step in. She must get those figures and she must publish them. But then you only have to look at the previous Justice Secretary to see Now it all becomes clear why the police are totally ineffective in Scotland and why so many women and children are being attacked sexually in hospital. Back down to Humza Yousaf again, isn't it? It's back down to him. Mary Howden, a WRN coordinator in Scotland, added, "We have asked our Scottish members to write to their MSPs to assist in this matter, and we would encourage anyone who is concerned about the safety of women and girls to do the same." And I ask you, everyone here who watches this, email your MSP, your MP, your local councillors, everyone. Demand answers. Demand that these figures are published. And demand that one figure in particular is published. And that is, are these Rs and attacks, are the perpetrators men who are identifying as women and being put into women's wards? And the reason I mention this, and I will actually try and find the video, and I'll put the link to the video, I'll put it in the description below, is that there have been occasions, more than one, where a woman has been R'd in a hospital bed by a man who identified as a trans woman, who identified as a woman, look at me, I'm a woman, was put into a woman's ward in a hospital, then committed that crime. And when the police arrived, the people running the hospital said, no, there's no men in that ward. The NHS covered up the attacks on women because they didn't want to be seen as endorsing any kind of anti-trans behaviour. That is how mad and bad it has got. And so we need to know the figures. How many of these attacks were committed by trans in hospital, locked in women's wards? It's important. As a result of this, it was the force said it would breach the Freedom of Information cost limit to go through all sex crime reports individually over the past 4 years. They're saying, oh, we can't give you the information, it costs too much. Well, I think it's cost those women rather more, don't you? The report, titled "When We are at Our Most Vulnerable," was compiled by Joe Phoenix, Professor of Criminology and Deputy Head of the Law School at Reading University. Despite police recording at least 6,500 Rs and SAs in hospitals in England and Wales, she discovered that only 265 people, 4.1%, are known to have been charged for these offences. Well, it doesn't help when the hospitals are covering it up. Dr. Phoenix says accurate crime data is essential for effective policing, but when you don't track reported crime, you can pretend there's not a problem. Data from England and Wales would suggest this is a serious problem in Scotland too, but it isn't taken seriously by the SNP, it isn't taken seriously by the current Justice Secretary, and it certainly wasn't taken by a previous one. He didn't take it seriously at all either, which is why women going into hospital are far more likely to be attacked than people in their homes or on the street. It is horrifying. I can't think of any other word. And no one is doing anything about it. And the police aren't interested because, hey, they're only women. That seems to be the consensus. Terrible. The police in Scotland are not fit for purpose. I'm coming up. Heads must roll. Either the current Justice Secretary reveals those figures, regardless of the cost, or she resigns. It's far too late for the previous Secretary. He's now running the country. He must resign. He must be asked, he must be pushed and stressed as to why these figures were not taken. The people responsible in the police must be held to account, must be fired if they're not revealing these figures. You must get the figures have to be revealed, and they must reveal how many of these attacks were committed by trans women, because you can guarantee some were. They certainly were in England and Wales. Why not in Scotland? And that is the problem. That is the nub of the problem, of course. You have the SNP that's pushing this trans rights issue, this very unpopular in the country trans rights issue, this gender reform bill. They're pushing this on one hand. They then cannot afford to have the number of women, R'd and SA'd in hospitals revealed, because it will show how many of those attacks were committed by men wearing women face, pretending to be women, getting themselves onto women's wards and then attacking women. That won't do at all, will it? Oh no, that would be political suicide for these people. They cannot, must not reveal those figures. And so you have this this dichotomy in the SNP. They talk about protecting women and children, and yet they do so little about it. And at the same time, they push laws that would enable men to get closer to vulnerable women and children. What do the SNP stand for? Nothing. They stand for nothing. They are very, very dangerous when it comes to the safety of women and children. And yet they're not revealing these figures because they're fripped. They're scared. They dare not do it. And they claim, oh, it's a cost factor. Bull. It isn't cost, it's fear. Fear because you know yet again that you're wrong. Anyway, it gets me so angry. So, ladies, if you have to go to hospital, be very careful when you get in that ward. Look around you. Make sure that everyone else in that ward is actually a woman. And I shall end there. Thank you very much for watching. If you like what you're seeing here on the channel, please do hit that subscribe button, ring that bell, leave a like, leave a comment, please share the video. And until next time, stay safe, stay well, don't go into strange places with men you don't know, and goodbye.